Nature. It's beautiful, isn't it? Whether you're taking a stroll through a wooded backyard or visiting one of the local mountains, haven't you ever been just a little bit curious as to how the mountains got there? How did the trees get so big? How did birds learn to fly? Well, join me, Crystal Cortez, Curator of Earth Sciences, as I take you through my journey to becoming a paleontologist. Let's start at the beginning. I'm Crystal. I was born in East LA to immigrant parents, and I grew up mostly in Ontario, California. My biggest influence was my big brother, who instilled a thirst for nature that continues to this day. What was my first introduction to paleontology? Well, like most people, I was introduced to paleontology through pulp culture. Jurassic Park was huge when I was about 7 years old, and I became fascinated. What were these things, these dinosaurs? And were they that big? Because that would be terrifying. So in high school, I took a geology course, and in that geology course, I was able to visit one of the local mountains, the Marble Mountains, where we were able to go out and find fossils. So I looked and I looked and I looked, and I told myself if I were meant to be a paleontologist, I was going to find a fossil that day. And I looked for hours and couldn't find anything. Finally, I gave up. I went to my teacher and I asked, all I'm finding is these squiggly lines. Those squiggly lines were this fossil up here. Needless to say, my teacher looked at me and said, Crystal, that's a fossil. So I took it as a sign. I was not meant to be an invertebrate paleontologist. So I became a vertebrate paleontologist. I volunteered at the Raymond Alf Museum as one of my very first volunteer positions, and I got to work with this little guy, Baby Joe. He's a baby Parasaurolophus. So how did I become a paleontologist? Well, I have a bachelor's degree in geology, a master's degree in environmental studies. I volunteered at several museums. I talked to many paleontologists. And I also participated in summer research programs that I worked in Nevada, Montana, and Thailand. So why paleontology? Of all the different things, why paleontology? Well, to me, it was more of because I wanted to prove what it wasn't. Growing up, I always heard that paleontology was only about dinosaurs. And I found out that wasn't true. I also thought that paleontology was something that happened in South Dakota, in Montana, not in California. And that also turned out to be false. I was also told that paleontology wasn't really an adult job. And that was wrong also. So I decided to go out and become a paleontologist that works not on dinosaurs in California as an adult. You would notice that I've made this distinction. I'm a vertebrate paleontologist. Why that distinction? Well, because there's many different types of paleontologists. There's paleobotanists who look at fossil plants. There's invertebrate paleontologists who look at soft and squishy things. There's vertebrate paleontologists like myself. There's paleoclimatologists. There's paleoecologists. There's paleoiconologists, and the list goes on and on. So I always make sure to make that distinction that I am indeed a vertebrate paleontologist. Now I'm going to show you some of the career paths that I have taken to become a paleontologist and some of the career paths that you can take as well. Fossil preparation. Fossil preparation is a person who prepares the fossils. When you go to a museum and you see these beautiful mounted specimens, that's not how they came out of the ground. It took someone with a skilled, trained eye to pick off every single little bit of that matrix and clean it up and make it look beautiful so that it can be displayed and shared with you. Another job that you can have is paleo mitigation. Mitigation occurs whenever there is a job site and they're moving ground. So if they're going to be digging in the ground, more than likely you're going to need a paleontologist there just in case there's fossils. So take, for example, this fossil here. This is a picture of me digging up a dolphin skeleton, and we left this guy in the ground. So he's there and he's going to be there forever because he was in such poor shape that there was just no use for us to take him out of the ground. Well, imagine, if you will, that there is a whole network of animal graveyards that are just waiting to be discovered right underneath our feet. And mitigation is extremely important in a place like California because most of California has already been built on. So the only way that a paleontologist can actually dig is if they're building a new building or if they're demolishing an old building and digging in for new pipes. Then there's a potential for us to go out and find something new. So where do all these things go once they're found? They go to a repository like the San Bernardino County Museum. Another career that you can do is be a collections manager. A collections manager plays a vital role in keeping a museum functioning. They take care of the database. Without the database, it would be nearly impossible to search for any of the material that you've collected. There's millions of fossils, and all of those fossils come with data, and someone needs to protect that data and keep it so that there is a record of where it came from, of what kind of sediment it was in. And so all of that helps a researcher come in and actually do research on the collection, which leads to the next point: research. Research scientists are crucial. They make the collection valuable. They come in and look at the different pieces and they piece history back together, and they actually teach us something about our natural history and the natural world that we never knew. And they teach us things like, how did the trees get so big? They tell us, how did birds learn to fly? And that's all done through research. So now I'm going to walk you through a few of my research questions that I've been able to answer. So then that way you can get a better feel as to what research can actually do. This first one is researching the Permian-Triassic mass extinction. The PT mass extinction is also known as the Great Dying. 90 to 96% of all life was wiped off of the earth, and we still are not very sure as to what happened. My role in this was that I looked at how animals recovered after this mass extinction. You may have heard that a lot of scientists believe that we are currently experiencing a mass extinction. So this type of information, how animals recover after a mass extinction, can prove crucial to deciding and figuring out what comes next for us. I also got to do research in Thailand, where I conducted research and did relative dating. So what is relative dating? I was able to use biostratigraphy to constrain the age of this site. Previously, this site had no age, so we had no idea how old any of the fossils were here. So what I did was I was able to use the existing fossils that were already there and the genera that we were finding in those fossils to constrain that age. We know that Stegodon, which was an extinct species of elephant, was present, and we also knew that Elephas, which is the genera that modern day elephants belong to, was also present in the sand pit. So the sand pit had to be as old as when both of those genera existed together. But my favorite subject to research is sharks, and this one took a big bite out of me. This brings back the idea of the collection's value, right? Because if someone comes in, this just looks like a big blob of something. You may see a few scattered teeth or some vertebrae, and then there's a bunch of brown stuff. But to the trained eye, I can see many more things. I see a tripodial rostrum, which is indicative of a lamniform shark. I also see a hyoid arc, which is the mechanism in the back of the jaw for a shark. And then this brown stuff. What is this brown stuff? Turns out it's shark skin, preserved pieces of the shark skin, these dermal denticles that help the shark swim. And there's also these calcified cartilage prisms. Calcified cartilage prisms encase the shark's cartilaginous skeleton to make it stronger and fortify it so that it can become that hypercarnivorous beast that we all know and love. A trained eye can also look at these shark teeth and see that there is the presence of these tiny lateral cusps. These lateral cusps are sometimes used to indicate a juvenile of this certain species. And you can also notice these rings on this vertebrae, and these rings actually can be carefully measured and put into an equation so that we can see how old the animal was before it died. So now, curator. You want to be curator. What do we do as curators? As curators, we take care of the collection. There's millions of objects that we need to keep record of. We need to make sure that everything is up to best practices and that we're living up to a curation standard. There's chemicals that are involved. There's certain techniques that are involved into taking care of a collection. And as curators, we need to stay up to date on the current practices. So that way we can really bring you, the audience, something special. And we can bring exhibits to you. We put together wonderful exhibits so that to showcase our collection and to show you what we have. After a researcher comes in and tells us something about the collection, then we're able to present it to you in a completely different manner and give it meaning and show you what the world was like before you were here. So why do I museum? I museum because I love doing outreach. I love coming out and speaking to the public and getting little ones excited about the natural world. I like connecting with other museums so that we can bring you better programming. I also get to play with fossils every day. Things that are millions of years old. How cool is that? And I also get to learn new things on a day-to-day basis. Every drawer holds a new secret, holds a new mystery that I never knew existed. But my favorite part about working in a museum is working with you, working with interns, working with volunteers, working with interns like Elodia here, who has just been accepted into a PhD program into Notre Dame. Or Albino, who had never had a job outside of warehouse work before he internship with me. And now he's on his path to become a bright paleontologist himself. Or Tyler, who was a pre-med student. I had no idea how closely tied paleontology was. All of this make my job so much more richer, and I give you and to bring you a full experience. Thank you for coming with me through this journey, and I hope you have enjoyed my journey through time, and I hope to see you very soon.